this next little exercise is going to be about making holes, and I'm sharing here with you the front cover of the book called Creating with Shapes by Usha Doshi. It's just a recommendation because it's a really inspiring book about making shapes with shapes, creating with shapes. And I'm just going to do a couple of simple exercises here. So first and foremost, we have the tool up here that is the toolbox for all the internal lines, and I'm going to start out with the ellipse. And the ellipse can either be we could just click and then a box pops up and you can plot in how big you want it by diameter, radius, circumference, replicate it, and you can position it. So the circumference could be useful if you know the circumference of like a hand that has to travel through a sleeve, or if you have need to make a hole you can put your head through. That could also be the circumference of the head in this case. I'm just using the diameter of 10 in this case here. And I could also just draw them like elliptical, or with the shift down, then I get the circle. For now, I'm just gonna go with the one down here. I'm just gonna move it up here where I think it might be more useful. And I'm just going to show you that if I right click with my edit pattern tool, I get the possibility of converting it to a hole. Then I simply get the hole and not the pattern piece is just gone. But if I do want to keep that pattern piece, I can say cut, and then I have the pattern piece, or I could say cut and sew if I knew I wanted to sew it on straight where it was. And then I can see the sewing lines over here. Yeah, so if I wanted to, I could also say I want to enlarge on this, and it's now still sewn on, and I can simulate and see what this gives me of some baggy material hanging out like a little rosebud almost here. I could of course also made it smaller, and if we just go back again, let's just say we're gonna redo that one so it's where we want it. Then I can also with this active, I can say I want it to be elastic band, and then I can simulate and I get the effect of the elastic band, and I can work on the ratio down here and make it tighter if I want. Now I'm just taking it out again. Yeah, so there's some of those with the hole. I'll just show as well that if I'll just do this one again with the if we say cut and sew, and I think okay, for the fun of it, I would like to circle this around. Then when I simulate, I'll see that absolutely nothing has happened, because the thing is the stitching is still the same. So if I want to be able to move things around the way I want by myself, then I have to say cut instead, and once I've cut it, I can just move it. And now if I now turn it around like that, and I use my free sewing tool, I can double click, and I can double click, and it's stitched together. And now when I simulate it, it will turn around. It will get a little bit stressed at first, but it will turn around there. So if you want to do something like that, you'll have to cut instead and then stitch it yourself. So the next way of making holes I want to show is the polygon tool here we have. It's called internal polygon /line, and when I use this one here, I can cut or I can draw just as I do in, say, Adobe Illustrator or any other vector program. I just click around, or I hold my left button down on the mouse and drag, and I get a curve. And if I want to go in the change direction, I want to cut back or go back on the point and then drag again, and there we are. And to make it a hole, I have to go back, I have to finish in the first point that I made. Just like before, this could also be turned into a hole, and I could just say convert to hole if this is what I wanted, or cut and sew. Let's say convert to hole, and then with my M to N free sewing, I could sew this together in however way I want it, and then I have to say enter, and then I follow the line around and go enter again. And I could have my pattern shaped in this way. And the third way I'm going to show is the dot. You find it in the same little toolbox over here. Dot. I can draw it out like that. Or, of course, I can do as I did with the others. I can make sure that it really is placed on in the size I need as well. So if I just say undo to this one here, I'll just click, and I could say the width was 5, and just keep up and down 10. I'll just move this so you can see what happens. Say OK to that, and because the program knows this is a dot, it's already stitching it up. So if I were to simulate, it would now look like that, just like any other dot would do. I could also choose to undo the stitching, say delete sewing, which would allow me to stitch in the way I want. So instead of stitching from side to side, I could do it across. And these are some of the ways that Usha Doshi works with, and it's very inspiring to check out what comes of it. So check out that book. It really is exciting. Okay, and if I don't want this anymore, I could just simply get rid of both the stitching and I could also get rid of the whole dart just like that, simulated so it falls down. And I'm just going to show one more thing, and that is that if so let me just show another way of using when it's not a hole, but if it's just a line I cut across, we could say. So I have my line now here. I double click to end the line, and I'm gonna say cut and sew, just like that. Now it's cut and sewed already, and we don't see anything here because it matches up totally. But if I want to change the direction of my, if I want to have this on the bias to see how it drapes instead, what I could do is that I could, now I'll activate this one here, and then I scroll down, and down here it says grain direction on the fabric, and if I here write 45, I get a bias, and we can see it immediately with the stripes as well, and we will be able also to see it once we simulate. So here it starts flaring a bit more because it's on the bias than it does up here. I might just show you a whole bias. Let me go back to this one here. I'm going to get rid of this one here. Just to go over the thing with the bias again. So if I now, when I have my fabric, say this fabric in here, if I want to change the direction so it's diagonal, and I click on the tool for changing my texture, I could now make it go diagonal, but this doesn't make it on the bias. This is very important to remember. So if you do want to make it on the bias, you need to click on the fabric you want on the bias, and then you need to change it on the fabric and write 45 degrees instead. And now you have it on the bias, and now you see how it droops. Just undo that so you can see it again. The moment it's on the bias, it droops, it creates these lovely easy folds, and it stretches because we don't have the firm grid of the X and Y axis anymore. Good.